Hello, everyone. Welcome to the episode 94 of SoLeadSaturday. The guest we have today, Aubrey Terrazas, is an 18-year hospitality professional, master sommelier candidate, and e-commerce entrepreneur who co-founded the digital wine service Palate Club. Beyond leading the international wine buying for the team, Aubrey used her experience of testing hundreds of wines each year to identify over 200 wine traits, the core data that Palate Clubs uses to expertly match wines to your taste. Aubrey is a wine educator and journalist that champions sustainability and up and coming regions for publications such as SommJournal and GuildSomm. Her ideas and disruptions to the classic wine club model position her as one of the America's top sommeliers and wine entrepreneurs. Aubrey lives between Florida and Lyon, France, where she frequents vineyards and is an avid runner. Wow, looks really very amazing profile. So just join me and welcome her on our SoLeadSaturdays today's episode. And let's just hear more about her career journey. How did she find her area of interest and managing to lead that? Hey, hi Aubrey. How are you doing today? Very happy to have you on the show and really appreciate all your time and consideration being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, same here. Actually, looking forward to hear because this is completely a new industry and would love to listen more from you, like, being an entrepreneur in the wine industry and how does it look like. So to begin with, we have our very first segment, which is more about passion or the interest. So how did you find your passion in this particular field and what steps did you take to pursue it further or what motivates you to be where you are today?
Yeah, I think for me, I got into wine because, to be honest, I worked in restaurants for a long time. I started serving when I was 14. And then, as you kind of progress in that, so even with my studies at university, I was still working in restaurants because, at that phase, I was able to get pretty good jobs at fine dining restaurants, which
Mhm.
earned more than a lot of my other student friends.
Mhm.
And so I just was introduced to really nice wines from a youngish age. What I really loved about it is that there's so much to learn. It's really never ending. So it's, I think, so incredible that it's a conversation piece that you share with friends that ties into history, language, culture, agriculture, travel. So there's, if you're someone that loves to learn, wine is such an interesting topic. I continued, so I sometime in my early 20s, I started to pursue the role of a sommelier.
Uh-huh.
And it's, for me, I transitioned pretty naturally as being a server for so long. But
Mhm.
then around that time, I started pursuing the Master Sommelier program as well. And that has a lot of really intense self-study,
Mhm.
and there are many different phases. I passed my advanced in 2017, and I've sat twice for the master exam,
Wow.
which is, it's not uncommon. There's 26
Mhm.
female master sommeliers in the States, just to put it in perspective.
Wow. Good to know, actually. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's like you actually followed the proper track to, get the proper education first, and then when you find your interest, you just try to explore it more and learn it more. So
Mm-hmm.
that is definitely one of the approaches, actually, when once you find your area of interest or the passion. So thank you so much for sharing. And moving towards our next segment, which is more about questions from the audience or topic of your interest. So one first question that we have is, what is it like working as a woman in wine industry?
Sure. I think that, there are a lot of biases, but honestly, a lot of it for me comes from um, the guest or the customer standpoint. For
Mhm.
them, it's really surprising to see a young woman
Mhm.
working in my level of career, when they kind of expect sommeliers or people in wine in general to be sort of older men. So it's surprising. And especially in a lot of metropolitan areas, the amount of women in the industry is growing all the time, especially in restaurant roles and marketing and other things like that. It's very dominated still in winemaking by men.
Oh, okay. That's good. And how did you struggle initially? Was there any struggle to get into it, or very competitive field to be in, that kind of?
Yeah, I think especially when I was younger, and there was a combination of me looking younger and
Uh-huh.
also maybe not having the confidence yet in
Uh-huh.
myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did pick up on a lot of, doubt, or, people would sometimes, I would approach a table as a sommelier and they would think I was the hostess.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
so one thing that I had to learn is that as a woman in a male dominated industry, you have to really, one, have the confidence, which meant that I studied harder, I worked harder. And the other thing is that you have to demonstrate your knowledge earlier on in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, a man can maybe walk into the same meeting and just wear a nice suit and, have confidence from the other side of the table immediately. For
Uh-huh.
me, I had to come in and say, I'm Aubrey. I've been working in wine for 10 years. These are the companies that I've built, da, 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 da. And then go into the rest of the conversation,
Oh,
because
wow.
that could kind of put them at ease to know that they were actually speaking with a professional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. And it is more or like proving your, where you belong to and how much you earned so far in
Yeah.
many years. So thank you so much for sharing. And the one more question that we have under that segment is there a sustainability when it comes to wine industry? Or how do you see sustainability in a wine industry?
Yeah. I think that it's something that is growing uh, in importance, especially in the last 10 years. I mean, traditionally, it's an agricultural product that's been around for thousands of years. And traditionally, it was made in what we would call sustainable methods today, just slow intervention, kind of letting the vines figure out for themselves, but, stepping in when you needed to, not using chemicals. And then I guess maybe in the 20th century in particular, they started to use more chemicals to make vines grow faster
Mm-hmm.
or to prevent disease or pests. Um, and now we're finding new technologies and new ideas
Mm-hmm.
to allow people to intervene less with chemicals, and also to be able to use less water.
Uh-huh.
The other thing we're looking at a lot is packaging and the
Mm-hmm.
importance of packaging on sustainability.
Mm-hmm.
For example, aluminum can be recycled almost infinitely.
Wow.
Glass has less life cycle of recyclability, and it's a lot heavier and takes more energy to produce as well. So it's heavier, which means more carbon emissions when you're shipping it,
Uh-huh.
and it also takes more energy to make. So we're starting to see more acceptance on the industry part to drink canned and boxed wines, but I still think we're waiting on a consumer shift to accept those changes too.
Oh, wow, that's great actually. And definitely when we are talking a lot more about, climate change, one of the areas that we have to work on is recycling. So that's great to see
Yeah.
that, wine industry also taking step forwards to bring that kind of a environment. So thank you so much for sharing that. Moving towards our next segment is more or about fun segment or the relaxation segment, where I'm going to give you three keywords associated with or linked to your career or the profile. And you have to just tell me whatever comes to your mind. So it can be an abstract definition, it can be a replacement keyword, or it can be, anything that you come across like after hearing all those three words. If you think about something creative linking those three words, you are welcome to do that as well.
Okay.
So are you ready?
Yeah.
So the first keyword that we have is work environment.
Okay. Work environment to me is the it's not necessarily a physical space, but it's the energy and the culture that's created with the company that you're working in.
Oh, okay. And the second keyword that we have is a gender bias.
Yeah, I think that that's something that women face in particular. I suppose men in certain industries as well. That it's just something to be aware of and something to work on together. So that way we have a better communication between genders in the workplace.
Oh, okay. That's a good approach to have. Definitely. Hopefully, by this podcast, we will spread that message out, and we will have that kind of a culture or the environment. And the third keyword that we have is empowerment.
Yeah, I think that that's a great word. So often people, especially in the workplace, they are kind of waiting to have something brought to them or to be told what to do. And being empowered is having the confidence in yourself to make your own choices.
Wow. Yeah, yeah. That is really very important culture. I believe that, giving that kind of a decision-making capabilities or empowerment at each level within the organization. So thank you so much for sharing and being impromptu in this particular section. You were really pretty good. So thank you so much. Moving towards our one more important segment is moreover like, knowing you. So exploring your career work or volunteering. So under that segment, we have a question which is more about, tell us little more about your work and how data science is helping to identify the changing wine palette of American consumer in the wine industry.
Yeah. So we use data science at Palate Club, which is the one of the companies that I helped to co-create. It's a wine subscription service that uses AI to match wines to your taste. And the way that we were able to do that is myself as a wine expert helped to identify around 200 traits that could be found in wine. And then we worked with data scientists. So we created an algorithm, and every time that you rate one of our wines, you just rate 1 to 5 stars based on your taste. Every time we buy a wine, we identify the characteristics in that specific bottle, maybe 30, 40 traits. And by you rating your wines, we start to learn more and more about your taste. And that improves over time as well. It's a responsive profile. So the more you rate, the more that we learn. And I think that that's so important, one, for the consumer, because there are thousands and thousands of choices now, and it can be very difficult to make a decision, even if it's just wine. But at the same time, I think people kind of get stuck with buying the same thing that they know they like. And again, being empowered to know what they love. And even if they're not using Palate Club every time they buy wine, still having that language and vocabulary to buy wine. From the industry standpoint, it also gives us a lot of data about what people like, which is really powerful because we're able to kind of reverse the supply chain. So instead of us buying what we like and then trying to sell it to you, we know what you like, and that allows us to buy more wines that people actually love and have shown with data that they want more of.
Wow, that's great actually. So it is more or like analytics, doing the analysis on the consumer market kind of, right? So
Right.
how their taste varies and looking for that particular kind of a consumer group. So definitely, I think this is one of the areas I guess data science can definitely leverage that platform or help wine industries more. So thank you so much for sharing. And one more segment that we are moving towards is about tips or advice. And here you can support your answer with books or courses. So the question that we have is, any tips or advice would you like to give to the students or the professionals who are looking to get into this particular wine industry and looking this particular field as their long-term career option, or being maybe more or like, looking to be an entrepreneur in this particular industry?
Yeah. I do think that if you want to work in wine, it really helps to have some sort of wine accreditation if you don't have the experience to back it up. Just like you might want to have a bachelor's degree in accounting if you're getting into finance or something like that. There are 2 major programs. There are others, but the most common are the WSET program and the Court of Master Sommeliers. Both are fine. It just really depends on your path. And people will nitpick, like, CMS, Court of Master Sommeliers, is for people in restaurants, and this other one is more academic. I would leave all that behind and just see which one has a bigger community, because you really need support to go through the exams.
Wow. So thank you so much for sharing. And that was pretty quick advice, like, small tip, but it is more wise actually to follow if you would like to follow it. So thank you so much. And the last segment of this particular podcast is more or leadership, which is very important for us actually because we stand for the solid leadership. So no doubt that you are truly leading your area of interest. So what is your leadership style and any specific leader that you always follow and admire and why?
Mhm. I consider myself more of a collaborative leader. I
Uh-huh.
really like to empower my team to be able to make decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't say that I'm 100% perfect every time, but I find that a lot of times your team might see things that you don't. And so instead of being authoritarian and saying this is the way we do things,
Uh-huh.
instead kind of listening and giving people that space to speak up and show their ideas, ends up with a better product overall.
Uh-huh.
There is a really interesting book, I think, for creating good rapport between leaders and team members called
Mhm,
Radical Candor.
mhm,
And that framework in general is kind of about showing that you care, but
mhm,
also still, part of that care is giving the tough feedback when it's needed for someone to grow.
mhm. Wow, that's great actually. So it is more or about mentoring as well along the line. So
Yeah.
when you are collaborating, it makes sure that you will mentor them as well and pull out their strengths. So thank you so much for sharing that, and that is
Yeah.
definitely a good leadership style to have. So it was really very quick chat, but it was really very useful insight for us for the podcast series, and I really appreciate all your time and consideration being on the show.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so this is all about Aubrey and the way she's managing to lead her area of expertise and leading the wine industry. So we are going to close today's episode with a closure quote from David Cummings, which says, corporate culture is the only sustainable competitive advantage that is completely within the control of the entrepreneur. Develop a strong corporate culture first and foremost. So, on that quote, we are closing today's episode. See you guys in the next episode. Until we meet, happy leading. Let's lead together. Stay safe. Bye for now.